The program you are about to watch is underwritten by Allergan. The views expressed therein are solely those of the doctors. With a growing demand for a preventative beauty regimen, how does starting early affect the overall trajectory of how your face ages? And if you didn't start early, is there a way to catch up? I mean, we all know that we start to lose the ability to create new collagen with each year of life, pretty much the moment we're born, right? And then we also know that we're starting to lose bone at the age of 25, and that bone loss becomes significant at 35. And so with that, Doris, like how early are you starting with some of your patients and why?
Well, when I look at my patients, I actually don't ask their age because I find that there are lifestyle components and genetic components to how we age, but 80% of how your skin ages is really lifestyle. So I try to help my patients understand what they have control over in lifestyle. And I know we've had this conversation and I'm the only one who feels this way, but I think that facial exercise and facial posture is really important. And I start teaching my patients at a young age how to make more appropriate and uplifting facial expressions so that anything else I do will look better and last longer.
Okay, and so what kind of uplifting, like,
well, when you
exercises?
smile big, your ears go up and your whole face lifts. And the laws of physics say you can only go in one direction at a time. So if I'm doing this or thinking this, I'm not doing this. So there is an opposing uplifting movement for every down movement. And muscles can only pull, they can't push. So I want to pull up and not allow those downward muscles that I see happening to women as we age, imploding on ourselves, take over.
Okay, I see Ruth kind of nodding her head.
I'm just smiling because I'm thinking of my grandmother who always used to talk about a Yiddish phrase which was verbissene punum. And what that means is a face that has just aged into a permanent state of unhappiness.
But
How about I knew what that meant? I'm an
to
honorary
that
Jewish
effect-
person. I knew what that meant. Yeah,
Right,
I knew what
and
that
to
meant.
that effect, Doris is 100% right, is that you use it, it becomes your habit, and it becomes what you project. It's so important.
Which is true to a degree, but I don't think people realize. I mean, they've been frowning, laughing, raising their brows all their life. Why all of a sudden at the age of 25 do you start to actually show wrinkles? And at 33 is actually when it's been shown that the first fine line truly becomes significant.
Right.
There's a reason for it. And so,
Well, so we lose collagen from ourselves, from our faces, we'll say, every year from the time we're 30, from other parts of our body as well. And so it's not until we get in our 40s and 50s that we're like, oh my God, what happened? What are we looking like? What's going on?
or your 20s if you're in San Diego or Los Angeles.
But the bottom line is that people don't understand that their habits have everything to do with how fast they're aging, as do their genetic patterns. If you are smoking and drinking and not sleeping and not exercising and tanning, your collagen loss is going to be a lot more rapid than your twin who is doing all of the right things. So it's a bit of all of that.
Right.
But the answer to your question is it's never too late. It's always better to start than not to start. And that's what your dermatologist can help you with.
Yes, and I tell my patients, everything that you do starting at an earlier phase, or when, it doesn't matter when you start, but obviously the sooner the better, and certainly with lifestyle changes.
Additive effect
there's
when
an
you do
additive
these
effect,
things.
but then if you do things on a certain path, you're going to age this way as opposed to this way.
Right, not only from
And-
the treatments that we do, but also the exposure that we have to certain extrinsic factors, not just smoking or the foods that we eat or the amount of UV light that we expose ourselves to, but even pollution. So what do you tell patients, Doris, as far as the additive effect and how cautious you have to be if you are going to start early, the ramifications of who you choose and the importance of who you choose, because there isn't an additive effect?
Absolutely. I think, I used to joke and say, when do you start your anti-aging approach? And I used to say at birth, as soon as you're out, things start to go downhill. And it's joking, of course, it's tongue in cheek, but it's different things at different ages, and we have to always take that into account. And that's why, as you started out with, it's so important to see a board-certified dermatologist. One thing we really need to touch on, well, actually two things, I want you to touch on one, but one that I think about a lot is how at menopause, you lose about 30% of your collagen in the first 5 years after menopause. But one thing I'd love to hear you talk about are the structural changes that happen over time, because we know the bone shrinks but the soft tissue expands. So we know a lot of what's going on and we can find ways to adapt to that. So how do you look and adapt to that? How do you talk to your patients and how do you think about it?
Yeah, so for me, when yes, perhaps if you smile all the time, you have these unopposing muscles that don't make you frown. But the reality is that we have muscles that naturally depress our face, whether they're the ones that are in the corners of our mouth. Marionette lines just don't happen randomly. It's not because we're losing volume along one particular line. It's because we also have a muscle that is there. We have an entire neck muscle that attaches to our jawline that pulls all the way down to our second rib and clavicle. And so, of course, if this is all resorbing and your muscle is trying to continuously find resting tone, before you know it, you are going to look like you're pulling down and sad.
And like you're perpetually unhappy.
And it's not just the face,
And
right?
so
Even
it's not
chest
just the face,
wrinkles.
it's the muscles, because you're aging, like you said, it's a global collagen loss that we're all talking about.
And it's not just the face, it's also the body, right?
Right.
And so 90% of women have cellulite, and then
And the other 10% think they do.
right. And then after the age of 30, there's not just an element of dimples. Now there's an element of skin laxity that contributes to the appearance of that cellulite.
I call that pseudocellulite.
Right.
It still looks lumpy and bumpy, but it's actually tissue laxity from cumulative sun exposure.
which
And
requires
Sabrina,
a different kind of
you can
tissue.
see cellulite in female babies sometimes, a little dimple in the butt, that type of thing. So you can see it really early in life. It's not true cellulite then.
But it's
Right,
not
well, it's because of the
about
estrogen that's still crossing over from the mother.
But it's
yeah.
not about
because of yes,
erasing
exactly.
it and avoiding aging. We talked about this
Yeah.
before. It's about accepting it and doing the best you can with it. So it's really about changing the slope of the curve of aging. So it's not
trajectory.
So that you're
severe.
balanced.
And it's
And so that you're balanced.
And that's what it's really about. And we have to empower men and women to understand the science behind it so they make decisions that are wise.
And we know that it's
Absolutely.
bone and ligament and muscle and fat in different layers of the skin itself. So all of those things have to be looked at and addressed in order to have best results. It's not just about chasing a line or wrinkle or looking at one component. It's understanding everything that it's in more than one dimension, so you have to address it in more
And
than
it's
one
all
dimension.
interrelated, and how you take care of yourself. All these people that think if they smoke and they vape, we can just fix anything, take a wand and just put it back together. It's all cumulative, it's all additive.
Absolutely. So I completely agree with you guys. I think it's important, as Doris mentioned, to see someone, specifically a board-certified dermatologist, to make sure that you're first properly assessed to determine what tissue it really is that's causing the signs of aging, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, because it's never too late.
Or 70s.
Or 70s, even 90s. And to recognize that it's not necessarily about treating every single one of those tissues. It's being aware of what's possible and being educated and empowered that you can change the trajectory, even by a degree.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to radically restore anything. You don't have to.
And all of those decisions are basically made in a much healthier way when you're not hit with basically fads and things that are being presented to the public that have no basis whatsoever.
That will be a trend today and will be out tomorrow.
Exactly.
So with that, whatever you decide to do, remember to stay under the guidance of a board-certified dermatologist and stay informed. Everyone needs to take care of their skin. Find out how on The Gist.